I think what we want to talk about is really just quickly about tires and where one can save money, how the value of tires comes into play, and where we go, um, and what we can do with them. Um, the important thing with tires and saving on money or tires is the fact that one's got to realize they cost a lot of money, and replacement of tires is not fun. It's a grudge purchase, and we need to get the most out of them that we can. So we boil down tires, as I'll talk briefly later on, about cents per kilometer. So let's just start with the markings on tires, because there's a lot of confusion often with regard to the markings on tires. The basic markings on tires are that you would be familiar with would be the 185, 75, 14 that you can see on the screen right now, which is basically that section there. Now, what that refers to, the 185 is the width across the tread path of the tire. Then that 75 is a percentage of the width, and then the R14 is the diameter, inner diameter of the rim section. So to get the overall diameter of the tire, one would take 185 times 0.75, which would give you a figure, let's, for want of a term, roughly say 150 millimeters. You take 14 multiplied by 25.4. That 185 times 0.75 would give you the aspect ratio, the height from there to there. So in other words, the additional diameter on top of the rim diameter, giving you your overall diameter of the tire when once fitted. Now, why is that important? And what's important there is that oftentimes people think you can change tire sizes on a vehicle and put different tire sizes on front to back or left to right. The worst you can do is left to right on the drive axle, because you will influence how the differential works during its and damage the differential. So it's pretty important that one sticks to the correct size and that you manage that size. The next part that we'll talk about just now is the load rating and the speed rating. We'll come into that in a few slides from now. And then what is probably most important is I want to talk about this DOT number, which is a 4-digit number somewhere around the inner circumference of the tire. That is the date of manufacture of the tire. And why that's important is because in many respects, people refer to the age of a tire, and if it's more older than 5 years old, you can't use it and insurance won't pay out and da-di-da-di-da. Those are in certain respects, there is a bit of truth to them, but in largely, that is merely a date of manufacture. Theoretically, and where this date is most important is that you should not be buying a tire brand new that is 5 years or older. Tires are generally designed to go for more than 10 years even. But let's not kid ourselves. The most important thing to look at is on the outside of the tire, in this area here. And I'm not referring to the M&S on it. In this area here, and also in this little area down here, all the way around the circumference, you will notice cracking and delamination around the tire point there. Now that's what is critical, not so much the age, because that can happen to a younger tire if the tire has been abused, and it can happen and it obviously can happen due to age in an older tire. It's all about the integrity of the tire itself and how it's managed. And the best suggestion or the best advice that I can give you on that is a regular visit to a tire dealer with a request to inspect the condition of the tires is probably your most important aspect around the date of the tire. And to worry more than that is not worth it. At this point in time, and just as a matter of interest, as a bit of a war story, in Scotland, they've just passed a law that no commercial vehicle may carry or be driven on a road with a tire that is older than 10 years old. So they use that DOT mark on the side of the road. If the tire is more than 10 years old in Scotland, that person's going to be in trouble. We haven't got that here yet, but there certainly is some moves towards that. Moving on, just to talk to you a bit about the, let me just clear this, the drawings, there we go. The construct of the tire, I don't want to harp on this for too much, but I just want to really run through. When I talk about the width of the tire, it runs from the shoulder, which is there, the shoulder section, across to the opposite side shoulder section. That's the tread width of the tire, going across like that. The sipes and the grooves are all designed around dispelling water during rainy season. And obviously, the deeper the grooves, the better they are in being able to move water out from under the tire. Remembering, of course, that your tire merely has the size of the palm of your hand, not with fingers, just the center palm of your hand, with as contact surface with the road. The bead section there, if that bead section is ever damaged, that tire cannot be used. Now, furthermore, in the event that you had to have a puncture through a tire, and this is quite important, if we look at the view on the right-hand side, you can see depicted there are lots of different layers of material. Now, if you get a puncture through the section where I've put the mark down vertically through the tread path now, that is easily repairable because the flexing of that section when the tire rolls is a lot less than if the puncture came through on the sidewall on the right. So hence, when you get told at a tire dealer, oh, we can't repair this puncture, it's on the sidewall, that's because A, it's the thinnest part of the tire, B, the laminates on the side flex dramatically. So if you have a puncture penetration through the sidewall and you put a plug through it, that plug is not sealing off and securing those plies in the sidewall. And the flexing there will cause leakage, and it can cause these laminates on the side here to delaminate and pull apart. And that's when you have a catastrophic tire failure when you least expect it. And that's referred to usually as a blowout. And the claim is, oh, there's nothing wrong with my tire, but I had a sudden blowout. And we've seen situations where people have had up to 5 or 6 puncture repairs in the sidewall of the tire, which is obviously, as you can see from what I'm showing you now, pretty criminal. The rule of thumb is that in the overall tire, one is not allowed to have more than 6 puncture repairs in any one single tire. If you have more than 6 puncture repairs, that tire is US. If you have puncture repairs over a certain size, and there's a SANS regulation to this, or SANS standard, you guys are all familiar with SANS standards. The SANS standard 10408, and that is to do purely with puncture repairs, which controls how tire dealers are allowed to do the working on repairs of tires. The next part I want to talk about is the load index, because this is pretty critical to what you guys do. As I can continue in the discussion, it's actually a huge pleasure for me to talk to you members of IOPSA, because you're such a critical part of essential services in our country. Load index for tires is the rating at which the tire can carry when properly inflated. And properly inflated is the critical issue here. An underinflated tire cannot carry the load, and an overinflated tire is not a good idea either. So typically what we would say is a correctly inflated tire is one that looks like it's correctly inflated. So you can take tire pressures between your 2.2 unladen value right up to 3.5, 3.8 bar if you need to get the right shaping out of the tire. so long as you're not doing that because you have overloaded the vehicle. If you're increasing the temperature, the pressure of the tire because you've overloaded the vehicle on that particular point, that's when you are making the big mistake. So if we talk about a load index, as we saw on that tire just now, of 82, it means that you've got a kilogram per tire of 475 kilograms downforce per tire. So you've got 4 of those on your vehicle. You've got 4 times 475 kilograms of mass that entire vehicle can carry on the tires that are fitted. So 4 times 475 is 1,850, I think it is. I'm not using a calculator right now. So it's 1,900 kilograms, okay? So you got a maximum there of 1,900 kilograms. So remove the tear mass of the vehicle, whatever that is, and then that will leave you with the mass that you can load on the vehicle as a carry mass. And don't forget to add yourself as the driver to that. Now, if you have to increase the pressure, the tire pressure beyond normal to be able to get the shape out of the tire, and I'll show you about shape in a moment, then you are underrating the tire. And one must be very careful of that. It's important, guys, that your tire weight rating or load index, should I say, correct terminology, your tire load index is correct for the vehicle's capacity in its design and in what you need to do with it. Don't try and go to a massively overrated tire just because you want to try and overload the vehicle. You're going to damage tires and you're actually going to damage the vehicle, because what that will do is it will translate into the suspension capabilities of the vehicle as well. I can talk for hours on all of this. I also, while I'm talking here, I also want to just mention to you that I'm available at any point in time after this session to answer questions directly. I'll leave my phone number with you after the session as well, if anybody wants to clarify anything that I have said or add questions to it. In terms of the speed index of the tire, this is also critically important, guys, and I'm sure some of you know it, or most of you will probably know it. Your Bucky tires are usually rated an S tire. That doesn't mean that you can travel at 180 k's an hour. It doesn't legally mean that. It means that the tire can maintain that as a maximum sustained speed. And if you're exceeding that, well, you're looking for trouble, because the tire just cannot manage that speed. And what we talk about, if I'm going to go back a few slides quickly to this one, when the tire is rotating, that sidewall is flexing all the time, continuously through 360 degrees. That sidewall of the tire flexes as it goes around. Now, the difference between how tires are made, high performance tires are made to withstand a higher rate of flexing here on the sidewall than your commercial tires. Because your commercial tires are designed to hold vertical height, whereas your performance tires are designed to manage lateral stresses for high performance cornering. So speed rating is vitally important to how you run your vehicles as well. So your BMW M3 would be a Z or a ZR rated tire, and your old Follow would be an M rated tire at 130, because well, unless it's modified, very few of them got much more than that. So speed rating, be aware of it. Your vehicle is, in the vehicle's handbook, the speed rating of the tires for the vehicle is set out there and clearly indicated. As I was saying earlier just now, your performance tires, and unfortunately this isn't the greatest pick, but it's a very old one. When you're cornering, your vehicle is pushing outwards or inwards, whichever way that you're cornering, left or right. And you can see at the bottom here how that tire is rolling on the sidewall. not only is it rolling on the sidewall over here, but it's also flexing up and down as it goes around. And your shock absorber is trying to reduce the amount that does it. So what that means is the tire is actually carrying more impact or more compression than you really expect. On top of which, when you're cornering, your car is rolling to the right in this particular instance. So the tire is now pushing inwards, and it's called the slip, the factor of tire slip or slip angle. So there's additional stress on the sidewall, and if the tire is underinflated, this amount of slip angle here increases, and it can pull the beading away from the inside of the rim. So if it pulls away, obviously you have a catastrophic failure of the tire. It pull and pressure release from that particular wheel point. So again, pressure is critical. Age of tire is critical here, and additional things like wheel alignment and balancing and rotation, which I'm coming to now. So let's just talk a little bit about cents per kilometer, and quite critical to what we do in all our tire life. And in fact, this goes to the entire vehicle life, is cents per kilometer. And when we talk about tires, in terms of the tire life, your tire life deteriorates exponentially as the tire tread wears. So the tread wears faster and faster as it comes down the curve. Consequently, because of that, your tread cost per kilometer goes up exponentially. And you have this cross point in the middle here, which is your optimum of cents per kilometer. Now, in essence, in the early stages of your tire, you lose the most tread, but you've still got a lot to go, so your cents per kilometer is still good. What that does is it breeds a false sense of security in the owner of the tire. And the owner of the tire then thinks, well, okay, these tires have done 25,000 Ks. I've only lost a millimeter of tread. So I'm now going to get 100,000 Ks out of the tires. Except that once they pass this point here, the tread wear continues to increase exponentially, but your costs go up because of your reduced mileage that you get out of them because of that tread wear. So in the latter half, call it, or latter 2/3 of the life of the tire, that section there, it's so critical to manage your tires. And this session is all about managing tires and tire management to get the best cents per kilometer out of the tires for yourselves. Obviously, when we look at tires, we look at wheel balancing, rotation, alignment, pressures, loads, tread depths, and wear patterns. And critical is to be able to recognize the tread wear factors. Points where, under inflation, obviously the center path is worn. Over inflation, the outer side, two sides are worn. Camber wear is when your wheel alignment, your caster camber and alignment is out. That's your camber wear, that's your toe wear. And then this is an interesting one that people often don't see and tend to overlook, and that's called heel and toe wear. Heel and toe wear comes largely from, and I say largely, not solely, from shock absorbers, where the shock absorbers are no longer able to keep the tire down on the road firmly and smoothly, and they allow the tire to bounce. You might not feel it, you might not notice it, and what is actually happening is, and to put it into perspective, a shock absorber oscillates up and down approximately 2,000 times per kilometer that you travel on a nice smooth tar road. And what that shock absorber is doing is it's keeping the tire down. Now, if that shock absorber oscillation becomes slightly too big because of the shock absorber having worn, then the tire gets more a higher degree of chatter onto the tar surface than it should have, and you start getting heel and toe feather wear. If that shock absorber is no longer able to contain that oscillation to the 2,000 odd times per kilometer on the same piece of road, then you're going to get additional chatter on the tread surface. And what that ends up being is a tire that becomes noisy. You end up with a vibration coming through into the vehicle, and obviously a higher, faster worn tire. So it's not a great set of circumstances to have. But these are all things that can be managed and watched through tire management as you use the vehicle. If we go into wheel balancing, I'm going to really say to you guys, there's two types of wheel balancing. There's static wheel balancing, which is on the left here, and there's dynamic wheel balancing. Dynamic wheel balancing balances the wheels on a three-axis process, whereas static balances only on a two-axis vertical up and down, X, Y. And what that does is the static will balance the wheels, and it'll be perfect, providing you're not going into a corner, providing you're not putting lateral stresses onto the wheel. The moment you put lateral stresses onto the wheel, critical is the dynamic balancing. Obviously, all the machines that we use in tire shops today are all dynamic balancers, unless you happen to be in the middle of the bush somewhere and somebody's using a static balancer, which is, funnily enough, a lot of motorcycles are only ever balanced on static. And that's because of the way that a motorcycle corners on the tire. Static is sufficient in most respects. What you want to do causes it out of balance, flat spots in the tire surface, potholes cause out of balance, punctures, too many punctures, bigger punctures that are too big, that aren't properly repaired, and can cause out of balance. If you park it overloaded, now this is what's interesting, is because parked overloaded translates into what's called polymer memory retention. And polymer memory retention is when you've parked a vehicle, say for a weekend or something, overloaded, you get into it, and for the first couple of hours, that vehicle hops and bounces on the road and it feels terrible. That's because the tire is holding that shape until it warms up. In many cases, that polymer memory retention sometimes sets into it and can't be released, no matter how long you drive it or heat it or warm it. Consequences of out of balance: increased wear, reduced road holding, increased braking distances is critical because the wheels are not holding on the surface properly, and obviously passenger discomfort, and which translates also to driver fatigue. The costs of out of balance are reduced tire life, increased shock absorber wear, and suspension and steering damage. Tire management in terms of rotation causes. Now, many people think, oh, we don't need to rotate tires. But you do. And the reason why is because when you are carrying a load on the back of a vehicle and you brake at an intersection, that weight shifts from the rear to the front, and there are extra stresses put onto the front wheels. And obviously the polymer retentions and the tread path get stressed through that process. So load distribution across the vehicle. Then in other instances where you've got the engine sitting on top of the wheels all the time, the load bin weight distribution, and then under braking. The excessive load on front tires under braking, acceleration, cornering. Obviously under acceleration with a front wheel drive affects the front tires in pull away and acceleration. And then in cornering, your front end load during cornering is way higher than your rear end load, even if you've got a load in the back of the vehicle. Costs are, if you don't rotate, you reduce your cents per kilometer dramatically. So by rotating, you spread the cost per kilometer across all four tires. You also reduce your long-term tire damage. So you won't wear out your front faster than your rear, for instance. and your vehicle stability is not impaired. Your vehicle stability remains intact by rotating on a regular basis. And the rule of thumb here for regular rotation is 8,000 kilometers. So to rotate, have your wheels rotated and balanced and aligned every 8,000 kilometers is the rule of thumb safety precaution on this. If we go into alignment, I'm not going to get too deep into alignment, but there are 3 factors around alignment. Alignment is the thrust angle, which is the direction that the vehicle overall is pulling. So when you see a vehicle going down the road and it's called crabbing, then the thrust angle is wrong. So the first thing we've got to do is we get the thrust angle right from the rear. So we get the rear axle straightened and in line with the overall vehicle. We then get the front aligned with the overall vehicle so that our thrust angle is going in the right direction. Once we've got that, we can then go into the other bits of measurement that are required for the particular vehicle, and those being the caster angle, camber angle, and the toe out. Caster angle is, relatively speaking, how your vehicle tracks on a straight road. So what we do with caster in South Africa is we put the caster on the left slightly less than the caster on the right, so that by natural virtue, the vehicle will draw slightly to the left of the road when you release the steering wheel. And that is done for a safety reason, so that the vehicle, although the thrust angle is still straight, should you happen to release the steering wheel, the vehicle should naturally drift to the left away from the vehicles that are approaching from the right. Camber angle is the angle that is allowed to compensate for cornering. So when you roll the vehicle into a corner, the tire then rolls flat on the surface over here in that corner as the tire sidewalls move. So that's critical as well to keeping the vehicle straight and steering correctly on the road. Then your toe out, which is the last one on the right-hand side there, is all about how your steering reacts to inputs from you and how the tires wear during normal straight driving. You want a little bit of toe out on a vehicle to keep the 2 wheels pushing against each other, and very little. If you've got toe in, you'll have very unstable cornering and handling. So a slight bit of toe out is usually desired in the specification of the vehicle. Just going to look again a little bit further about your negative camber, so that you can see in this particular picture what the virtue of going into a corner with negative camber. So this is your static vehicle, not moving, slight negative camber, and then this is your vehicle at positive camber rolling into a corner and keeping the tread path square onto the road in that corner, which is what you ultimately want in terms of where you're going. Sorry, I jumped that one. Then positive caster, your positive caster pushing the wheel forward, vertical caster straight down, and then negative caster, which we put onto the left wheel slight. And I say it's very slight. It is extremely slight. You won't notice it, but it does allow the vehicle, as I say, to pull slightly to the left. So when you see these readings, you might you'll bear in mind what the conditions are that are require on it. When you get a vehicle that pulls to the left quite firmly, it's usually because the camber of the road is also negative to the left. And that's just an unfortunate duplication of issues. Loads and pressures, I spoke about correct inflation. The correct inflation very simply says the sidewall must be the right shape and the tread path section must be firmly on the road. Under inflation, you're obviously losing all that center section there. Over inflation, you're losing your shoulder sections for cornering.